So Lightroom 9.5 has now landed, and there's a fair bit in this one. There's some new features, there's a long list of bug fixes, and there's support for some new cameras and lenses. Now, I'm not going to walk you through every single item because most of it you'll never notice. What I want to do instead is take the three that I think are the most significant and show you properly how they work and when you'd actually use them. Then I'll run through everything else at the end so you know what's in there. Now, those three things are the new sliders for refining a mask, a new option called render to DNG, and the crop panel, which has changed quite a bit. But one thing to say up front, because it will save some of you at least 10 minutes, is that this is all about Lightroom Desktop. Lightroom Classic got its own updates at the same time, and there's some genuinely good stuff in it. But a couple of the things I'm showing you today haven't made it across to Classic yet. So if you're a Classic user, just know that going into this. And I'll be honest with you, one of these three quietly fixes something that's irritated me about presets for years. That's the one I'll stick around for. Oh, and if you're new here, hit subscribe and give the bell a tap so you don't miss any future videos. Right, let's get into it. So first one, and I'm going to be quick with this because some of you will have seen it already. There are two new sliders for refining AI masks called Feather and Edge. And if you're thinking you've watched somebody demo this already, you're probably right. It's been in Camera Raw for a while now, and it's been sitting in the Lightroom pre-release builds as well. What's changed this week though is that it's public. Everybody's got it now, including you. So let me show you a quick example on a portrait. I'm going to select the eyes here, and I'm going to turn the mask overlay on so you can actually see what's happening, because without the overlay, this whole feature is invisible and you're just guessing. Now, watch the edge of that mask as I bring Feather in, and then Edge. You can see it tightening up against the eyelid rather than spilling out over the skin. So now when I make adjustments to make the eyes pop, the adjustments are only where I want them and not spilling out onto other areas. That's kind of really the whole point of these two sliders. It's not that Lightroom finds your subject any better than it did before, because it doesn't. If select subject grabs the wrong thing, these won't rescue you. What they do is clean up the last few pixels of the boundary, which is exactly where masks used to fall apart when you push them hard. And it's not just about portrait work either. I found this really useful on buildings against a bright sky, trees with all the fine detail in the branches, horizon lines, particularly where the sky is a lot brighter than the land underneath it. Those have always been the selections that gave Lightroom a bit of trouble. You'd get that faint halo running along the edge that quietly gives the game away, and you only really fix it by going in with a brush. So being able to tighten that up properly with a slider is genuinely great to see in Lightroom. Right, that's that one. Let's get to the interesting stuff. Now, number two is render to DNG. You right click a photo and there's a new option in that menu called render to DNG. What it does is create a new file with everything you've done so far in Lightroom baked into it, and it drops that file next to your original. Now, the way I think about it is this. It's like making a copy of your photo, but a flattened copy. If you're used to using Photoshop at all, you already know this idea because it's kind of like a stamped visible layer. That's the one where you merge everything you can see into it into a brand new layer, and all your original layers are still sat there underneath, completely untouched. That's exactly what's happening here. Render to DNG hands you the merged version to work on, and your raw file is still sat there with every setting live, exactly as you left it. And that for me is the whole reason this is worth knowing about, because whatever you do next, whether that's throwing a preset at it or expanding the composition or anything else, it happens to the copy. Your original photo sits there with everything still live, exactly as you left it. You get to try things without it affecting or undoing everything you've done up to that point. Now, before I show you why that's useful, I need to explain what this file actually is, because this is the bit that will catch people out. Despite the file extension, a rendered DNG is not a RAW file. It's a TIFF in a DNG wrapper. And the way I describe the difference is this. Think of your RAW file as a negative, and think of the rendered DNG as a print. Your RAW file is holding a lot more information than you can actually see on screen. There's detail up in the highlights that look blown out, but aren't. There's information down in the shadows that look black, but isn't. And that's what you're reaching into every single time you pull a highlight slider down and watch a sky come back. When you render to DNG, Lightroom takes the version of the photo you're looking at right now and makes that the photo. Everything you didn't use gets thrown away. So that sky you could have recovered, if you haven't already recovered it, you can't really now, it's gone. White balance behaves exactly the same way. On a RAW file, white balance is a proper RAW adjustment, and you can move it a long way without it falling apart. On a rendered file, it becomes a much blunter tool, and pushing it far starts to look wrong quite quickly. So this tells you exactly when to do your editing, and there's one distinction that makes the whole thing click. It's the difference between recovering and adjusting. Recovering is when you pull a highlight slider down and details come back that you couldn't see before. You're reaching into information the RAW file was holding on to. That only works while you've still got the negative, so that the work you do first, bringing down a blown sky, opening up shadows that have gone flat, getting your white balance sorted, and so on. Adjusting is just about moving pixels you've already got, brightening the image, adjusting contrast, shifting the color, and that works perfectly well on a rendered file because it isn't asking for anything that isn't there. So it's not that you can't touch exposure after you've rendered. You absolutely can. You just can't bring back what you didn't rescue while you had the chance. Get that order right, and this is a genuinely useful tool. Get it backwards and you'll be sat there wondering why you can't rescue a sky that you know full well had detail in it 10 minutes ago. The one real upside though is file size. A rendered DNG is considerably smaller than the equivalent TIFF, so it's handy if you're passing a file on to somebody. Okay, so why would you actually use this? And this is the bit I mentioned right at the start. You know, when you spend 20 minutes editing a photo, you've got your exposure right, you've worked the tone curve, you've done your coloring, and then you think, well, I'll just give it a try with a preset on this to see what it looks like. And everything you just did disappears. That's because a full look preset sets its own values for color, exposure, contrast, clarity, all of it. It doesn't add to your edit, it replaces it. Now, to be fair to Adobe, you can see what a preset is going to do before you commit to it. So it's not as though you're going in blind, but that doesn't actually help you. So here's the trick. I've got my base edit done on this RAW file. And this time I'm going to render to DNG. And now I apply that preset to the rendered file. And the reason is that the second time round, Lightroom had nothing left to overwrite. My edit is in the pixels, so the preset sits on top of my work instead of replacing it. Now, one honest caveat though, because a rendered file has less headroom than a RAW, a preset that pushes exposure really hard can clip your highlights in a way it might not have done on the original RAW file. So if you're using a particularly heavy preset, keep an eye on the top end. It's another good reason to get your recovery done first. Number 3, and this is the headline, Generative Expand. First thing you'll notice is the crop panel isn't called the crop panel anymore. It's called Crop and Expand. Now, before I show you this working, we need to go back to render to DNG just for a minute because the two of these belong together. When you use Generative Expand, Lightroom flattens the AI work you've already done into the image before it builds the new pixels. So any generative removes, any denoise, any AI masking, that all gets baked in first, and afterwards you can't go back and adjust those individually anymore. Now, Adobe's own suggestion is to go back to a version or a snapshot if you need to change anything. But there's a cleaner way of handling it, and it's the exact same move we just used with the preset. Render to DNG first, because now you've got two files sitting there. You've got your original with every setting still live and every AI edit still adjustable, exactly as you left it. And you've got a flattened copy that you do the expanding on. So if you decide in a week that the generative remove wants redoing or the masking needs tweaking, you're not stuck. The original is still sat there with everything intact, and you just render a fresh copy and expand that one instead. Now, some of you will be thinking, well, why not just do the expand at the very start before you've done any editing at all? And you're right, you definitely could. If you could expand first, there's nothing to flatten because you haven't done anything yet. And there's an argument it gives you a better result too, because the new area then goes through the whole edit along with everything else. But that's not how editing actually works. You get into it, you sort the exposure out, you do your masking, you tidy a few things up, and it's usually somewhere around then that you look at it and think, actually, this could do with a bit more room on the left. That's the moment this matters. You've already done the work and you don't want to throw it away or start again just to change the composition. So you render a DNG. Your original sits there with everything intact and you take the flattened copy and you recompose that. You get to change your mind late without it costing you anything. Right. So let me show you the most obvious use for this, which is a portrait that's framed too tight. Now this one, I was too close and I've got no room above the head and nothing beside the shoulder. I've rendered my DNG, so I'm working on the flattened copy. And now I drag the crop outwards past the edge of the original frame. And Lightroom fills it in. Now you've got two options for how it fills that space. One of them is the generative route, which invents new content and handles complicated backgrounds. The other samples from the pixels you've already got, which works better on plain or repeating backgrounds. And it's worth knowing what each of them actually cost you because there is a difference. As things stand, a Generative Expand uses 1 credit. And if you're on a Creative Cloud Pro account, it doesn't use any credits at all. But this is the bit I'd pay attention to. If you go for the content aware option instead, that doesn't cost anybody any credits, whatever plan you're on. And the reason for that is it isn't an AI feature. It's not generating anything. It's sampling pixels that already exist elsewhere in your photo and using those to fill the gap. So if you've got a fairly plain or simple background, try that one first. You'll often get exactly the results you're after. It costs you nothing and there's no generated content in your picture at all. And that flattening I mentioned earlier isn't Adobe being careless, by the way. It's deliberate. By baking your AI work in first, Lightroom doesn't have to regenerate all of it every time you adjust something further back in the edit, and that saves you generative credits. So the order I'd work in is this. Do your generative removes and any AI work first. Get the photo where you want it. Render to DNG, then expand. Same principle as the preset really. Bake your work in deliberately on a copy so that nothing downstream can take it off you. But if you want to do it right at the start, that's your choice and it's still a viable option. Now, there's more in this release than just those 3 things. The bug fix is long and it's a meaningful one. Masking sliders not resetting properly, crashes on launch from permission errors, star ratings misbehaving, GPS information not pasting in local view. If you skip the last update because it felt unstable, this is the one to take. There's new camera support for the GoPro Mission 1 and the Mission Pro, and preliminary support for the Sony RX10 V. New lens profiles too, including the Canon RF 7-14mm fisheye, the DJI Mavic 4 Pro, and a couple of Laowa macros and the Sigma 85mm f1.2. And if you're on Windows, there are performance improvements aimed squarely at you. Smoother scrolling in the grid, smoother window resizing, and a more responsive interface generally. But that's Lightroom 9.5. And if you take one thing away from this video, I'd make it render to DNG. It's easily the least exciting of the 3, and I think it's the one that will save you the most grief, because whatever you decide to do to a photo after that point, your original is still sat there, untouched, with everything still adjustable. And listen, if you want to carry the conversation on, I've got a free photography community over on School. It's where I answer questions, share what I'm working on, and where you can post your own photos and get some proper feedback on them. Doesn't cost anything to join, and the link is in the description below. Right, that's all from me, so I'll see you in the next one.